Welcome back, everybody. Ready for another deep dive?
I am.
Awesome. Today, we're taking a look at Woody Allen, specifically through the lens of the Enneagram.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, it should be really fun. We'll be focusing on the self-preservation 6 type, which, as many of you probably know, is known for some things like anxiety, a need for security, a reliance on routines, that sort of thing. And I am just so curious to see how this personality type plays out in Allen's work,
Yeah.
both in those unforgettable characters he creates, but also in his own life.
Well, and I think what's so interesting about the Enneagram is it gives us this unique window into personality, like the motivations behind people's actions.
Mm.
And Woody Allen, he's such a captivating case study, especially for the self-preservation 6. I mean, you think about it, his films, they're practically overflowing with anxiety and fear and that search for stability.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So we'll be able to like really see those traits in action, you know?
Yeah. And it's funny because one of the things that's always struck me about Woody Allen's films is just how much anxiety is like baked into the storytelling. It's not just like
Yeah.
a one-off theme, it's like
Yeah.
it's like a defining characteristic of so many of his characters.
Oh, totally. And even from the get-go, like remember that opening scene in Annie Hall?
Oh, yeah.
Albie Singer's just a kid, gets taken to the doctor because he's depressed about, well, everything really. The universe expanding.
That scene, oh, it's so good. It really sets the stage, doesn't it?
Totally does.
Right.
And it's like a perfect illustration of that anticipatory mind that Claudio Naranjo talks about. Remember, he's an Enneagram expert.
Oh, yeah.
And he describes that as just like this key trait of the self-preservation 6.
Yeah.
Always anticipating danger, like living in this state of high alert, like they're bracing themselves for like the next bad thing.
Right. Like they're just waiting for the other shoe to drop, kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not just like a general sense of anxiety either.
Sure.
It's like these characters have, like specific fears and phobias, obsessions even.
Yes.
Like in Manhattan, Isaac dating Tracy, who's still in high school, and he's just consumed by guilt. So much anxiety over the age difference,
Absolutely.
Oh, it's so Woody Allen. It's not just that fear of the unknown either. It's like they're hyper aware of everything that could go wrong.
Oh, yeah. Every little pitfall, social faux pas, you name it.
They're trying to exert control in this world that's anything but predictable.
Right.
And this need for control, it shows up in interesting ways, not just the worrying. Think about it, Allen's filmmaking style. Super distinctive.
There.
And he is known for sticking to it.
No, yeah.
New York City, always the backdrop, same types of characters. Even the dialogue has a rhythm to it.
Right.
Do you think that could be our self-preservation 6 at work?
Oh, absolutely. Think about it for this type. Routine.
Mm.
It's not just about being efficient. It's about keeping that anxiety in check. So those familiar places, predictable structures, those routines, those all create this sense of security, of safety.
Makes total sense. So for Allen, sticking to what he knows his style, New York, that becomes his way of creating like a safety zone for himself.
Exactly. And, Naranjo talks about this in his work. He calls it territory for the self-preservation 6. It's all about belonging, feeling secure and in control, which you see so clearly in Allen's films, Upper West Side apartments, intellectual cafes, those walks through Central Park. All of that becomes part of his familiar territory, the comfort zone.
It's like he builds a world for his characters and for himself that mirrors that inner world of the self-preservation 6.
Absolutely. And if you really dig into that inner world, there's this fascinating paradox, how they relate to authority.
Oh, interesting.
Crave structure, they need rules.
Yeah.
But they also have this deep distrust of anyone in a position of power.
I can see that. It's like they need the system to feel safe, but hate being told what to do.
Exactly. And that rebellious streak, we see it all the time in Allen's work. Poking fun at institutions, religion, politics. He even goes after psychoanalysis.
Oh, yeah. Like in Hannah and Her Sisters, right? All of the characters are questioning everything.
Yeah, their faith, their therapists, their own choices, searching for meaning, for security, but they're skeptical of anyone who says they've got the answers.
And Love and Death. He turns philosophy and religion into a running joke.
Oh, it's brilliant.
Like he's highlighting how absurd those big systems can be. They don't always provide the comfort and certainty people are looking for.
And what's striking is that Allen himself, he embodies that paradox perfectly. I mean, he's a master satirist, right? Criticizing authority in his films. But then he relies on Hollywood, the ultimate system, for his own success and stability.
It's like he's playing the game, but he's questioning the rules at the same time.
Exactly.
The complexities of the self-preservation 6 right there on display. And those complexities, they extend to relationships too, I mean, let's face it, Alan's characters are kind of a mess when it comes to love.
Oh, yeah. And this is where the core desire of the self-preservation six comes into play. They're yearning for warmth.
Warmth.
Yeah, that deep need to feel loved, secure in their relationships. But their anxieties, those insecurities, those often get in the way.
Right, right. Like in Annie Hall, Alvy is always analyzing his relationship with Annie, trying to pinpoint what went wrong.
Oh, yeah.
And Mickey in Hannah and Her Sisters, he's just eaten up by jealousy, that fear of losing his wife. It's like they create the very instability they're trying to avoid.
Yeah, and that fear of being vulnerable, it can make them create distance, even from the people they care about most.
Yeah.
They might seem aloof, detached.
Right.
But it's not that they don't want connection. It's that they're terrified of being hurt.
I see that. It's like a defense mechanism.
Yeah, they're almost testing the people they love, pushing them away to see if they'll come back. That constant need for reassurance.
Needing to know that they're loved and accepted.
Absolutely. And you see that dynamic so often in Alan's films. They're searching for validation, a sense of belonging.
Yeah.
But their own anxiety often blocks them from having what they want most.
It's a tough cycle. But, it's very human too.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that's part of why Alan's films resonate with people, even when his characters are being totally neurotic.
Oh, totally.
He gets that universal human need for connection.
Absolutely. And he captures it with this mix of humor and pathos.
And it's captivating. I can't stop watching.
Me neither. I mean, he's brilliant.
Yeah.
All this talk about anxiety, it makes me think about another big one for the self-preservation six. And it's a theme that pops up all the time in Alan's work.
What are you thinking about?
Death.
Death. Oh, wow. Yeah, I can see that. I mean, they're so focused on staying safe, on survival.
Exactly.
So thinking about, like, the fact that we all die.
Yeah, that has to be a huge source of anxiety for them.
Makes sense.
Naranjo actually considers them the most phobic, I think, of all the Enneagram types.
Really?
Yeah. And this fear of death, it can manifest in different ways, like a preoccupation with health, hypochondria, maybe, even like obsessing over these existential questions.
Oh, yeah, like the meaning of life and all that.
Exactly.
And we see this play out so clearly in Hannah and Her Sisters, remember? Mickey has that health scare.
Oh, yeah?
And he becomes convinced he has a brain tumor.
Poor Mickey. He goes through a full-on existential crisis.
Doesn't he? That scene where he's listening to Mahler's Fifth Symphony, contemplating the universe. It's just like classic Woody Allen.
It's so good. It's funny, but it's also kind of heartbreaking,
Yeah, it's both. It's definitely both. And it's not just in Hannah and Her Sisters either.
Oh, no, not at all.
I mean, you see these themes of guilt, death, that search for meaning in a random universe in a lot of his films.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Hmm.
Crimes and misdemeanors, shadows and fog. Those are great examples.
It's interesting, though, right?
I-
Because he uses humor to deal with all this, like, dark, heavy stuff.
Right. It's like he's saying, okay, yeah, life is terrifying, but we might as well laugh at it,
I love that line in Love and Death. Boris, right before his execution.
Oh, yeah.
He's like, I'm not afraid to die. I just don't want to be there when it happens.
Oh, I remember that.
It's so Woody Allen.
Yeah, totally. It's that defense mechanism, using humor to deflect from the anxiety.
Yeah. Make the unbearable a little bit easier to deal with.
Exactly. But then, like, underneath all that laughter, there's this deep awareness.
Of what?
Just how fragile life is, And all those, like, big existential questions, we all face them.
We do.
It's like he's saying, hey, come on, let's laugh at our anxieties together.
Yeah.
Acknowledge how absurd it all is. And maybe, just maybe, find some comfort in that.
Yeah, and that shared experience.
Exactly.
And speaking of shared experiences, I've been thinking about all the different anxieties we've been talking about, like the need for control, fear of vulnerability, that back and forth with authority.
Oh, yeah.
Are there any scenes or characters from Alan's films that stand out to you that really capture those traits?
Oh, so many. But one that comes to mind right away is Judah Rosenthal from Crimes and Misdemeanors.
Oh, yeah. What about him?
I think he really embodies that conflict Naranjo describes.
Oh, yeah. For the Self-Preservation Six.
Yeah, exactly. That struggle between those, like, primal desires
Right.
and wanting to be good, to fit in, to feel secure.
He's got it all. I mean, he's a successful ophthalmologist, right?
Yeah, picture-perfect life on the surface.
But he's having an affair.
Yeah, and then when his mistress threatens to expose him, oh, man.
The choices he makes.
They go against everything he supposedly believes in.
Don't they? That's what's so interesting, He shows us that dark side of human nature.
Oh, yeah.
Like, even the most upstanding people.
They're capable of desperate things when their world falls apart.
And you can feel it throughout the film. I mean, that tension. His desire for control, but he's afraid of losing everything.
Yeah.
Then there's the guilt over his actions.
Oh, it's palpable.
Yeah.
He gets so caught up in his own anxiety,
Yeah.
and then he makes choices that just lead to more suffering.
A classic self-preservation six trap.
Totally. And what's crazy is, even in a film like that, I mean, we're talking about murder, infidelity, pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah.
Alan still finds a way to bring in the humor.
He does, yeah. It's often through Cliff, right?
Yeah. Cliff Stern, the documentary filmmaker.
He's such a lovable goofball.
Isn't he? He's like the perfect counterpoint to all that darkness.
Yeah, he is.
It's like Alan's reminding us that even when things are bad, there's still room for laughter.
Yeah.
For those moments that connect us as humans.
Definitely.
And, that makes me think about something else we talked about earlier.
What's that?
The self-preservation six's need for warmth.
Yeah.
That need to belong. I think Alan's films offer a really unique perspective on how that plays out in relationships.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, think about Alvy and Annie in Annie Hall. They're both so hungry for love, for connection.
Yeah.
But then they're also terrified of being vulnerable.
Of getting hurt.
Right. Of making the same mistakes they made before. Of losing themselves in the relationship.
Oh, that's a good point. They have all that witty banter, they're always sparring intellectually.
Yeah, totally.
But underneath, you can feel it. There's this longing for something more,
Right.
for that sense of belonging.
Yeah, and their anxiety just gets in the way.
It does. I mean, Alvy's neuroses, they push Annie away.
Totally. And then Annie's need for freedom, for growth.
Yeah.
That challenges Alvy's need for control and stability.
It's that classic push and pull, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
When one or both partners are dealing with all that self-preservation sick stuff, wanting intimacy but afraid of getting too close.
Yeah, wanting connection but afraid of losing their independence.
And we see this play out in other films too, don't we?
Oh, absolutely. It's a theme he comes back to again and again.
Like love, marriage, infidelity.
That search for meaning in relationships that can feel like both fleeting and really profound,
Yeah.
He captures it all so well.
That messy, complicated nature of human connection.
He's honest about it, And it can be uncomfortable,
It can.
but it's also deeply moving.
It's like he's saying, hey, relationships are hard, they're messy, they can even be painful,
Right.
but they're also an essential part of what makes us human.
Exactly. And maybe by exploring all of this, he's giving us a chance to see our own patterns,
Yeah.
our anxieties, our own need for that deep connection. The one that can be so scary and so comforting at the same time.
It's amazing, right, how we can use his films to think about our own lives, our relationships,
Yeah.
and maybe even understand, the things that shape our choices.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that's why I find the Enneagram so fascinating, It's not just about putting people into boxes.
No.
It's about recognizing patterns, understanding what motivates people, developing empathy.
For ourselves and for others.
Exactly.
Earlier you mentioned Woody Allen and Dostoevsky,
Oh, yeah.
that they might both be self-preservation sixes. It was kind of a surprise at first.
I know, right?
But the more I think about it, the more I can see it.
Oh, yeah. They're similar in a lot of ways.
I mean, they both explore those same themes. Existential angst, moral dilemmas that search for meaning.
They do. But their styles are so different.
Totally different. I mean, Dostoevsky dives right into human suffering,
Yeah.
Super intense, dark.
It's heavy stuff.
And then Allen comes at it with humor and all that neurosis, like two sides of the same coin almost.
Right. Showing us how the self-preservation six can play out,
In real life and in art.
Yeah.
Can you give me a specific example of how that works in their writing?
Okay, sure. Let's look at Dostoevsky's notes from Underground.
Okay.
And Allen's play it again, Sam. Okay, so in Notes, right?
Yeah.
The narrator,
Yeah.
he's really alienated. He's full of self-loathing, paranoia.
Oh, wow.
He just rails against everything. Society, reason, even himself.
It seems bleak.
It is.
It is.
It's like a portrait of the self-preservation six at their absolute lowest point.
Yeah, completely isolated,
Yeah.
full of despair.
It's a tough read.
It is?
But there's also that humor in there.
Right. Oh, for sure.
Like when he's making fun of himself.
Yeah. It's like sardonic wit. It keeps you hooked, even when the content is kind of disturbing.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. And then in Play It Again, Sam?
Yeah. You've got Alan Felix, recently divorced.
Yeah. Trying to figure out dating.
He's a film critic, right?
He is. And he's a total mess. Neurotic, insecure. He's always asking the ghost of Humphrey Bogart for advice.
Oh, it's so funny.
It is. So much lighter than Notes.
Right. Way more comedic.
But underneath, both characters are dealing with the same core anxiety.
What is it?
Being alone. Wanting to connect.
Yeah.
Struggling to find their place in the world.
It's so universal, isn't it?
It is. And it's interesting how they both use fantasy to cope.
Oh, how so?
Well, the narrator in Notes, he escapes into his own imagination.
Yeah.
He creates these elaborate scenarios to deal with being alone.
Makes sense.
And Alan, he turns to Bogart.
Right. Like a fictional version of him.
Oh, yeah. He's projecting all his anxieties and hopes onto this movie icon.
It's amazing how both writers, such different styles, different genres even, are tapping into the same anxieties,
Basically.
same coping mechanisms.
Yeah. The self-preservation 6, right there.
It shows you how universal the Enneagram can be.
It does.
It helps us understand human nature, no matter the culture, no matter the art form.
Exactly. And that's what makes exploring this stuff so fun.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, we're not just breaking down Woody Allen films here. We're getting insights into what it means to be human.
Yeah.
The things we all worry about, the choices we make, the ways we try to find meaning when everything feels so chaotic.
Absolutely. Wow, this has been an amazing journey. We've covered so much ground today, not just about Woody Allen's films, but really about the self-preservation 6. I mean, what stands out to you as like the biggest takeaway from our deep dive?
You know, what's so cool is how Allen really gets the nuances of this Enneagram type.
Yeah.
He doesn't sugarcoat anything.
Mm.
He shows us their anxieties, their quirks, their self-destructive tendencies sometimes.
Yeah.
But he also shows their humanity, their humor,
Yeah.
their smarts, that deep longing for connection.
Right, right. He doesn't just label them as anxious and call it a day. He shows us the whole picture.
Exactly. The struggles, the little moments of grace, the way they deal with life's messiness, often in hilarious ways.
And you can't help but see yourself in these characters.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, all that stuff we've been talking about, the need for security, the fear of being vulnerable, that push and pull between wanting connection but being afraid of getting too close. I feel like that resonates with everyone on some level, no matter what your Enneagram type is.
Oh, for sure. The Enneagram, it's a framework. It helps us understand these universal human experiences. But it's through art, through stories, like the ones Woody Allen tells, that we really see those patterns play out.
Yeah, he's like holding up a mirror to our own anxieties,
He is.
to our desires, to the ways we try to figure out this crazy, beautiful, sometimes scary thing called life.
Exactly. And he does it with such wit,
He really does.
with intelligence.
Yeah.
It makes those hard truths a little bit easier to digest.
I know for me, one of the most valuable things I'm taking away from this is a new appreciation for the Enneagram.
Yeah.
Not just for understanding myself, but for understanding the characters I encounter in books and films, even in real life.
Oh, I love that. It's like a secret decoder ring for human behavior, right?
It is.
Helps you see beyond the surface stuff.
Yeah, totally.
So the motivations, the fears, the things that drive people's choices.
And it helps us be more empathetic,
Yeah.
more compassionate
Yeah.
to ourselves and to other people.
Exactly. And I think that's what Woody Allen's films do best.
What do you think that is?
They explore what it means to be human,
Yeah.
with all the messy, contradictory parts.
Right.
And they remind us that even when we're at our most neurotic, we're not alone.
So to our listeners, keep exploring.
Yeah.
Keep asking questions, keep laughing. And maybe the next time you watch a Woody Allen film, you'll see it with a fresh perspective,
I hope so.
with a deeper understanding of the Enneagram and how it reveals all those beautiful complexities of human behavior.
It's a journey, for sure.
It is. Thanks for joining us on this one.